What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and today we are going to talk about the latest news on the New York Islanders. So last week, things have been changing quickly with the Islanders, and unfortunately, I was busy working this weekend. I was not able to post this video sooner, but now is as good a time as any. So the New York Islanders have well, I guess you got to say it the right way. He wasn't necessarily fired. He was not given an extension to be the general manager of the New York Islanders. And what's interesting about this whole situation is I think kind of what we were expecting down the stretch. A couple of things happened to make the decision easier for the Islanders ownership, specifically John Collins, who is now going to be in charge of the search for the next general manager of the New York Islanders moving forward. There were a couple games down the stretch that really painted the picture for what was going to happen for the New York Islanders in 2025. And it goes back to, I think it kind of started even like earlier this season. Elliotte Friedman had mentioned that there were some rumblings and some stuff about potentially the Islanders firing Lou Lamoriello back in December of 2024. And I think the Islanders pushed away from that at that point. They discussed it internally, but nothing really came of it. And then we kind of had the conversation again at the end of the season. A couple of really tough losses for the Islanders. I think really the loss that, the Islanders had some really bad games down the stretch. I could go throughout the season, some of their biggest losses of the season. I would say two notable games that really hit my psyche this season. And the first one was the day before Christmas Eve. It was a beautiful Christmas gift by the Islanders. The Buffalo Sabres were on, I think, a 13 or 14 game losing streak. It might have even been worse than that. And the Buffalo Sabres, struggling as all heck, come into UBS Arena and beat the Islanders 7-1. A team that has been on a 14-game losing streak comes to UBS on the road and wins 7-1. That game was very, very telling. And again, going back to Elliotte Friedman's reports, it would make some sense if the Islanders were considering, like, listen, a 7-1 loss in that style, maybe it's time to consider that. So that's where some of the discussion probably started. And the Islanders kind of turned things around for a couple of weeks. In the middle of January, pretty much up until the break in what is that? I guess it's in February, the February break. So for the end of January, they turned things around a little bit. You got some hope. Maybe they make the playoffs. And then the game against the Rangers. So for a multitude of reasons, this is a huge, huge problem. So my dad was a season ticket holder for the New York Islanders this past season. He's been since they moved to UBS Arena. And shout out to my dad if you're watching. And the Islanders have made it to the point now where a lot of people are selling their season tickets or getting rid of them. And my dad was one of them. People are frustrated between the parking situation, the traffic getting in and out. I mean, from Long Island, like, Queens is kind of far. It's a lot further than Nassau Coliseum was, specifically for me, living out east. It's difficult. And it's already hard enough because I work in Queens. It's even more difficult, just to go there for fun. And I think that that's a big problem for a lot of people going to the Islander games. It's been really difficult to deal with that. We're talking about 45 minutes to get to a game, and we'd like to get there early, so you got to be there even earlier than that. And then if the game, like every game, we pray that it doesn't go to overtime because you could be spending a good 4.5 hours at a hockey game. And it's just one of those things where it's a lot. And then you have this game here, which I'm getting back on track here, a 9-2 loss against the Rangers at UBS. And the reason I bring up the whole thing, my personal story, is I don't go to Islander Ranger games at UBS Arena anymore. Because there are more Ranger fans at the UBS Arena game than there is at the Garden. There's much more casual Ranger fans or, people with businesses that sell their work tickets, or people that are coming into New York City and, oh, that's one of the tourist attractions to do is watch a Rangers or a Knicks game. They're not as, and this is not a shot at Ranger fans, but you obviously understand the environment we're talking about, right? Like for the playoffs, that place is rocking. It's loud. You feel that energy. But during a regular season game, specifically for the Rangers, it's much more of a business environment. It's not as rabid of a fan base compared to you go to a game at UBS or a normal Islanders game. There are so many Ranger fans that the hardcore dedicated fans go to, and when the Islanders put up a 9-2 loss at home, that was a huge deal in the Islanders deciding to let go of Lou Lamoriello. This has been years now where the Islanders, if they have that game at home at the end of the season against the Rangers, they are notorious for having this situation happen, where they just get blown out. And I went a couple years ago, and between the Stadium Series game and that game later that season, it literally has gotten to the point, and that's why I haven't been posting as much too. Like, I have almost lost my love for the Islanders, and it's kind of been because of the last couple of years. It just seems like there's no direction with this team. These embarrassing losses, this Stadium Series loss, this 9-2 loss, the game I went to a couple years ago, I think it was a 7-4 loss to the Rangers, and it felt way worse than that. The point is, the Islanders have had a really tough couple of years, and it started off so good when John Tavares left. Barry Trotz comes in, Lou Lamoriello comes in, and then all of a sudden we start to see the stability of the franchise come into focus, and it really did work for a little bit. But to be honest with you, like, what really great moves did Lou Lamoriello actually make? You kind of look at what he's done. I mean, he traded Devon Toews for 2 second-round picks. He's probably one of, I would say, the 3 best pairs in the NHL for defensemen alongside Cale Makar. It's really difficult. And then you look at that, the drafting situation, the atrocity. I mean, Dobson's still on the Islanders, but like Dobson, Wahlstrom, the Wahlstrom situation, the lack of development from Bridgeport. Bridgeport had 4. Let me say that again. The Bridgeport Islanders, AHL team, had 4 home wins the entire season. That is a new AHL record. The original AHL record at the beginning of this season was 7. They almost cut that in half. 4 wins on home ice. I wonder why people aren't going to games in Bridgeport. I could never imagine why. And then you think about, well, who are these players that the Islanders are developing? Because God forbid Cole Yzerman was down there this season. I would have hated the idea of him being down there and dealing with that. But you know what sucks too? There's a lot of good Islander prospects that maybe could be bottom 6 players. How are they going to develop in that situation? That is a pure atrocity, nightmare, losing environment. And that's Chris Lamoriello, who was supposed to be the heir to the throne to Lou Lamoriello. He can't even take care of business in the AHL. How is he going to take care of an NHL team? Absolutely not. And every game, I remember seeing they would show the final score for the Bridgeport games, and the comments were always, get rid of Chris, get rid of Chris, get rid of Chris Lamoriello. He's ruining this team. You have to wonder, something's probably going to come up there. And I compare that, and this is going to the AHL thing. Everybody was talking about the Washington Capitals, how things don't look so good. They might not be doing anything crazy here. They might be starting that rebuild. But because of the development of the American Hockey League there, the Hershey Bears, shout out to them. I'll be going to their Game 2 against the Lehigh Valley this weekend. Different conversation. The way they develop in Hershey is incredible. They're trying to go for their 3rd straight Calder Cup playoffs trophy. And you see how things turned around with that team, right? Alexei Protas, nobody thought he would be a prospect. Look what he's turned into. Connor McMichael, expectations were high, but they still had to develop him there in the AHL. Martin Fehervary, who's a regular on this team now. Alexander Alexiev, maybe to a lesser extent, but all those guys have developed in the Hershey Bears organization. It starts from there and it works their way up. And those are the key guys that come up through the system, like a Protas, like a McMichael, that even when you lose guys like TJ Oshie, Nick Backstrom, those are the guys that replace that And they didn't have to get top 5 draft picks to do that. That's where the Islanders have fallen short in so many areas. The Islanders could have very easily avoided this situation when they had those back-to-back picks with Wahlstrom and Dobson. If those were hits and home runs, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. And we'd be talking about how the Islanders did such a great job at the draft and redeveloping their prospects and getting guys in. Instead, signing veterans that, as much as I love all our veterans. I love Martin. I love when Clutterbuck was there. I love Cizikas when he was there. Listen, the Islanders decided to protect Cal Clutterbuck and his contract and letting Jordan Eberle, a top 6 scoring winger, which teams are always looking for, they just sent him right over to Seattle like it was nothing. Those are the type of things that frustrate Islander fans. And that's where a change in direction, a change in mindset is going to be really important for this team. Listen, give credit where it's due. Lou Lamoriello did a great job with this team. This team has had success that I have not seen in my lifetime. Back-to-back runs to the Eastern Conference Finals, arguably 1 or 2 goals away from the Stanley Cup Final in 2021 and 2022. Or 2020 and 21? Yeah, in the playoff bubble. It worked. It worked during that time. Shortened season. Certain environment that just bred for the perfect environment for the Islanders. But what did we see the first time we had a full 82-game schedule? Things fell off. Barry Trotz left. Well, maybe on his behalf, maybe not. Barry Trotz leaves for whatever way. And then the Islanders have not been the same team since then. Barely scraping by, making the playoffs, and then just getting curb stomped by the Carolina Hurricanes. We know that story. We've seen it the last couple years now. It's been a running joke. Here come the Islanders taking on the Hurricanes, and boom, over in 4, 5. If the Islanders are lucky, maybe 6 games. I am glad to see it finally happen because the Islanders needed to miss the playoffs. And honestly, I wish they lost a little bit more than they did because there's no prospects on the Islanders that you're really worried about, like them not being in a winning culture. These are all aging veterans that probably are going to be out the door in the next 2 or 3 years at most. And that's what leads us to the next conversation because now it's a matter of what's next for the Islanders. Now, the Islanders have been tied to a couple of different names, which kind of interesting. And to be honest with you, I'm not really thrilled with any of those options. I think that was part of the problem here with getting rid of Lou Lamoriello is, did they look at the market and kind of look at, well, if we're going to replace Lamoriello, is there anybody out there that we really like, that we really want to bring in and we feel is going to be an upgrade over Lou? And to be honest, I don't know if there really is, especially from these names that we've been hearing. So the first conversation, which we'll get into, there's going to be a quicker conversation. I don't want it to blow up into anything crazy. But there are 2 assistant general managers. I don't remember the second team, but I know the New Jersey Devils have an assistant general manager, both of them being women. Listen, if they're the most capable for the job, I'm all for it. The only thing I just don't like about it for the Islanders is I think it becomes a distraction. Like whenever it's people are going to make such a big thing of it being the first female, general manager, which it shouldn't be about. It should be about what have you done? What can you bring to us here, right? Like what is your track record? It doesn't matter. Like I understand people want to celebrate those things, but at the end of the day, like they're a general manager and we're going to treat them as such. They're going to get the same criticism. They're going to get, if anything, it might be even more criticism, right? And that's the thing that the Islanders got to toe the line here. Like you're definitely going to be drawing a lot of attention from that. And the other name, which I definitely would rather those 2 first options compared to Ken Holland, which is the name that's been talked about as well. I hate the idea of Ken Holland. I think that is one the Islanders should absolutely stay clear of. And the reason for that is, you look at his recent record, right? The kind of the decline of the Detroit Red Wings. It worked for a time, but then it didn't. And then he gets kicked out of Detroit. He brings up the Edmonton Oilers. To be fair, he did bring in some pretty solid prospects. Philip Broberg has developed into a pretty good player. Dylan Holloway, guys like that. Those were all under the watch of Ken Holland. So that could be a good sign. But then you have the situation again, we're signing some veterans to some massive contracts that could really, really hurt. The good news is for the Islanders, they already have a bunch of those contracts. So it's not even like Kenny Holland can bring those in. The Islanders already have those big contracts on veterans, so you probably won't see a situation like the Darnell Nurse situation, which he signed him to a pretty long contract for a lot of money, and it's not looking so good right now. That contract did not age well. So that is one I would definitely stay clear of. With that said, I'm sure we'll hear more options. Again, Patrick Roy is still the head coach of the New York Islanders at the making of this video, but things can change. You know, the second they bring in a new general manager, you wonder if there's maybe going to be a situation like, does this coach see eye to eye with what we think, or do we want to start with a new clean slate? And as much as I think there were a lot of things that I liked about Patrick Roy, I don't know if it was so much because of Lou or because that's just the way he is, but I wish he was holding guys a little bit more accountable. And I feel like maybe that is part of the thing with Lou. I think Patrick Roy does like to criticize his team when it's necessary, right? We saw the whole thing with Duclair. Like, that's another thing. What are they going to do with Duclair? That's going to be a really interesting conversation. Apparently, they were close to extensions with Boqvist and Palmieri. Where is that going to lead? Or is the new GM going to say, listen, we don't want those guys, right? Like, let's start off with a clean slate. I don't really know. I think the Islanders want to keep those guys. Tony DeAngelo said he wanted to stay with the Islanders. Matt Barzal has already talked that he wants to go to the Montreal Canadiens. Here we go. We're going to go through this whole circle again. I don't see it happening, but it's been talked about. You know, the Seattle Kraken, because he played for the Thunderbirds in the Western Hockey League. All that stuff. We're going to hear about it this summer. I really wouldn't read too much into it. But I will say this. I think the Islanders are in a situation now where I think a lot of the fan base is on board with a rebuild. So if that is the direction that the Islanders decide to go, I think that is a viable option. I think the ownership sees what this team has been the last couple years. A team that just makes it to the playoffs. They give up everything they have just to get in and then get bounced in the first round. And you remember even a couple of these playoff runs, like getting to the playoffs, the Islanders needed a little bit of luck on their side. They kind of backed their way in. You know, Pittsburgh was playing the Chicago Blackhawks final game of the season in, what was that, 2023? It was something like that. It was a couple years ago. And Pittsburgh, all they had to do was get a win against Chicago, who was dead last, getting Bedard in the draft. They couldn't beat them, right? And Tristan Jarry had a whole blow-up. They lose that game. And the Islanders backed their way into the playoffs. And that's kind of been the story for this team. And as much as it sucks to see the Islanders not make the playoffs, it's necessary. And I think a lot of the fan base understands that. And I think with the direction of the Eastern Conference right now, it's been pretty vivid seeing, you know, especially teams like the Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins. You know, there are teams like Montreal, Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa, more on the Metropolitan Division side. We're going to start seeing the Blue Jackets, the Flyers starting to work their way up, and you're just going to become a victim of the old card, and teams are just going to take advantage of that. So I'd love to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of this whole thing with the Islanders? I can't believe I just went on for 20 minutes talking about all this stuff, but this is a deep conversation we need to have, because I think the Islanders, when it's all said and done, there's a lot of potential on this team. That, you know, nobody saw when Lou Lamoriello came in to this Islanders team. Nobody thought the Islanders could do what they did those back-to-back seasons, but they did. It is possible, and 1 year can change a lot. And it's going to be difficult because the Islanders are going to have to let people go that we probably don't want to see go. But it's going to be an interesting summer. And when you have a guy at the top of the draft, right, maybe not at the top, maybe he's not the first overall pick, but you have to wonder if Brayden Yager is available. You know, is there any way the Islanders would move up in the draft? And if that means trading somebody in order to do that, I wonder if this GM wants to make their mark on this team. Taking a kid from Long Island, high-end prospect, you know, potentially a top 5 pick if the Islanders have the 10th overall selection, or maybe they move up. Maybe they move up into that 2nd or 3rd spot from where they're at. It is a possibility. So it's going to be one of those things. If the Islanders, things maybe you know, ping pong balls bounce a certain way, maybe there's a way the Islanders can do that, right? But I'd love to know what you think. We could talk about that more in the summer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this kind of content, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.